Hello, my name is Christopher Renstrom. I'm the creator of rulingplanets.com and Christopher Renstrom Astrology, and I want to welcome you to my weekly horoscope for May 20th to May 26th, where we will be focusing on Jupiter entering the zodiac sign of Gemini. Now, Jupiter entering the zodiac sign of Gemini is a pretty big deal. That's probably because Jupiter is the largest planet in our solar system. Jupiter is also the planet of good fortune and higher purpose, and it is said that when Jupiter is transiting your zodiac sign, it brings good fortune and higher purpose to those people who are born under that sign. Jupiter will spend about a year in a zodiac sign. So Jupiter enters the zodiac sign of the Twins on May 25th, and Jupiter will leave the sign of Gemini on June 9th, 2025. Jupiter in the zodiac sign of the Twins. What does that mean? Well, I know that from different Geminis that I read for and different Geminis that I'm friends with, that they're all sorts of giggly in anticipation about Jupiter entering their zodiac sign. That's because when it's said that Jupiter is in your zodiac sign, it brings good fortune to everything that you do. And in some regards, this is perfectly true. It does bring good fortune to the things that you do if you are born under the zodiac sign that Jupiter is in. If you want to, you can always turn to a Taurus that you know. And even though they might sort of list all the things that weren't so great, pretty much more Taurians than not have had a good year with Jupiter having been in their own zodiac sign. So Jupiter in the zodiac sign of the Twins will basically emphasize all the good aspects of being a Gemini. What are the good aspects of being a Gemini? Well, a lot. In fact, probably too many to count. Geminis are very playful, they're very friendly, they're the zodiac sign that knows how to break the ice in any social situation. Indeed, many Geminis can, any social situation, not know anyone and probably be on best terms with everyone in the room in a matter of moments. They just know how to break the ice with a fun fact, a conspiratorial glance, a secret entre nous bit of information. Geminis love to trade in information, whether it's gossip, sharing an insider tip, or some sort of fun fact that you didn't know about a subject before or a person before. They know how to get people talking, and that's because Gemini is an air sign. The air signs are Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. And what's important for the air signs are people. Indeed, each of the air signs describe the three stages of relationship. For Gemini, which is the first of the three air signs, the reason it's the first of the three air signs is because it's the first air sign to appear in the agricultural year as it begins in the Northern Hemisphere here with the zodiac sign of Aries. Gemini basically rules over your first relationships that you form in life. Now, a lot of people, in particular Sigmund Freud, thought that the first relationships that we form in life are the relationship to our parents, or more specifically, our mother. But I beg to differ. I don't think that the relationship with the mother is really a relationship. What you form with a mother as an infant is a bond, and one might even say a sort of power relationship, because the mother is definitely the one in charge, and you're definitely the one who is reliant on her. Now, if you've ever watched one of those nature shows where they're dealing with buffaloes or birds or maybe even cats, all right, you will inevitably see some sort of episode in which a mother lion, for instance, has given birth to cubs. Well, what do we see of the cubs when they first emerge? They're frolicsome, okay? They're playing with one another. They're jumping up on mom. They're maybe pawing their father in the face, while he's trying to nap in the afternoon sun. And they're getting into all kinds of mischief and all kinds of hijinks. And this is what I want to illustrate about Gemini. This is the zodiac sign of play, because play early in our life is the way that we begin to relate to other people. Gemini, being the zodiac sign of the Twins, obviously rules over sibling relationships. And those, in my opinion, are the first relationships we form because it's with a sibling that you play. It's with a sibling that you learn what it's like to win or to lose. The sibling is the one who's in agreement with you at times, in disagreement with you at other times, or who's fighting over the remote control because you want to see a show and a sibling wants to see another show and you're screaming and crying at the top of your lungs. Okay, so it's the sibling who's meeting you where you are. And now for those families in which the sibling was maybe 7 years older or 10 years older or 15 years older, well, or maybe you came from a family with no siblings. At some point, you're going to develop a relationship with the next door neighbor kid. Or if you're going to preschool, you're developing a relationship with another kid at school. Or maybe even it's a play date. You're meeting that contemporary. You're meeting that person where you are, and you're figuring each other out, and usually it's done through play. So Gemini is a zodiac sign that's very much associated to play. It's also associated to games, and it's associated to tomfoolery, and it's associated to mischief and pranks and getting into all kinds of delightful trouble, or at least you might think it's delightful trouble when you're 4 or 5 or 6 or 7. Your parents might regard it as a real pain in the derriere. But anyway, these sorts of little adventures you have as a child are very much associated to the zodiac sign of Gemini. So Jupiter is a planet that brings benefits, okay, whenever it's traveling through a particular sign. And for those of you born under Gemini, you will definitely benefit from Jupiter's tenure in your sign. The other signs that are going to benefit from Jupiter's stay in Gemini are going to be the air signs, Libra and Aquarius, as well as the fire signs, Aries and Leo. Sagittarius is a little bit dodgy, and I'll get into that when I go ahead and share with you the forecast for Sagittarius for the upcoming year. But definitely, Libra, Aquarius, Aries, and Leo are going to be signs that benefit from Jupiter being in the zodiac sign of the twins. So Jupiter brings benefits. It brings good things. And this is something that's pretty readily established in astrology. Jupiter also rules over the way we look at good fortune in astrology. It even has an association to the way that we look at God, or maybe it's a goddess, or maybe it's a pantheon of gods and goddesses, or maybe for you, God is math. Okay, so the way that you look at the divine in your life has 12 different faces, which is Jupiter in each of the 12 zodiacal signs. So how does fortune show up in the zodiac sign of Gemini? First, as I said at the beginning when I was talking about the air signs, fortune is going to show up in the people that you know. All right. These may be people that you hang out with on a regular basis, or it may be people that you've yet to meet. But Gemini being an air sign means that fortune shows up in your interactions with other people. A basic rule for Jupiter in an air sign is you cannot experience good fortune unless the people around you experience good fortune as well. In other words, Jupiter in an air sign, be it Gemini or Libra or Aquarius, is a sort of, we're all in it together Jupiter, okay? So the more good that you do for other people, the more good will come around and also benefit you. So there is an interactive component when we have Jupiter in an air sign, and it's definitely interactive in Gemini because this is a one-on-one interactivity. Now, is it just going to be sort of like, here's your slice of good fortune, like someone, I don't know, throwing a Bronto burger on Fred Flintstone's car and it tilts on over, okay? No, it's in Gemini. So fortune has to come to you through play. It has to come to you through your interactions with other people. Now, the example that I sort of wanted to bring up with Jupiter and Gemini, and I was very happy to learn that it was a coincidence. Or was it a coincidence? Is anything ever a coincidence in astrology? Anyway, there was a favorite author of mine that I read his book in the late 1980s, and it was popular in the 80s and the 90s. And it was this wonderful book that was called All I Really Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. Okay, and to me, that is how I would caption Jupiter in Gemini. And it was written by Robert Fulghum in 1986. And by chance, Robert Fulghum also happens to be a Gemini. And I was rather tickled when I learned that because of Gemini's association to the third house, and the third house ruling over childhood and early education. What always delighted me about his book, aside from these wonderful stories that he would tell, and people with Gemini are wonderful storytellers, but what really delighted me about his book was his premise. This idea that everything I really needed to know, I learned in kindergarten. And he goes ahead and he lists the things that we learned in kindergarten as basically rules we should live by. And here they are as he listed them. His kindergarten rules was, first of all, share. You learn to play fair. You learn not to hit people. You learn to put things back where you found them. You learn to clean up after your own mess. Don't take things that aren't yours, and say you're sorry when you hurt somebody. Those are wonderful rules to live by, and those are wonderful rules to keep in mind as Jupiter is passing through the zodiac sign of Gemini. So what is Jupiter in Gemini going to mean for people born under the zodiac sign of Aries? Well, the first thing that came to my mind are the two things that Aries and Gemini have in common, which is competition. All right? Remember that we were talking about sibling rivalry as being our first way of relating to another person. And children, when they're relating to one another in their early stages, are basically relating through play in the way that they get along. So what Jupiter is going to do in Gemini, for those of you born under the zodiac sign of Aries, is that it's going to bring like-minded people into your life, okay? These are people who agree with you, people who laugh at the same things you laugh at, people that you really enjoy the company of. And Jupiter, when it's passing through a planet, can either deepen those associations or bring people into your life who are more like-minded than you have enjoyed so far. But it's also going to bring up the idea of sibling rivalry. What happens in a sibling rivalry? Well, sometimes sibling rivalries originate with a parent. One parent favors one child over another. So there is a sort of conflict as to get more of the attention. And so Aries is used to competing. People born under Aries, it's ruled by the planet Mars, which is named after the god of war. Mars also evolves into being the planet which rules over sportsmanship and athleticism. So the idea of competition is really wired into the zodiac sign of Aries. Now, Aries can have an interesting relationship to being a team player. Is Aries a team player? Aries is absolutely a team player. And it's usually Aries that's going to be the MVP. And if it's not the MVP, it's the one next to the MVP. But Aries has a hesitancy about actually becoming the captain of the team or the leader of the team. It would rather shine in terms of its performance, but the idea of leading or directing is not something that's really big for Aries, which is interesting because Aries is a zodiac sign that's often associated with coaching, but that comes later on. So what's interesting, and I think that because Jupiter is Gemini, which is a mutable, changeable sign, what's going to be interesting is that the Jupiter in Gemini is going to play on your feeling of being good, but not too good. Now, with Aries, you have to be the best at whatever it is you do, or you have to be in the lead of whatever you do. And it's this need to be first that sometimes gets confused with leading. Just because you're out in front doesn't mean that you lead. It just means that you're coming first. All right. And so Aries, can relate to the idea of being out in front or coming first. But Aries also can deal with the idea of not wanting to be too good. Because when you're too good, then you can upset relationships. You can incite rivalries. You can become the object of jealousy. So what this Jupiter in Gemini is going to do is that it's going to bring a sense of rivalry, perhaps with people who are very close to you, and you may find yourself in a bit of a moral predicament, that are you kind of hanging back and letting them do better, or, is your best friend doing really well, and now you have envy about that. So these are going to be things that Jupiter will be introducing in its stay in the zodiac sign of Gemini. And the reason it's introducing that is to move you away from this idea of competition as a blood sport. Now, I'm not saying that every Aries takes on competition as a blood sport, although the origins of your sign do come from things like Roman gladiators. But this idea of seeing competition as going up against someone so that it brings out the best in you and it brings out the best in someone else. And you might be in a place in your life right now, Aries, where you're kind of very much within a box. And the fact that other people maybe are getting a bit more recognition or more approval than you are might be getting you to a point where you're going to go outside of the box. You're not going to color inside the lines so safely. You need to sort of show what you're about. Even if you've been ruling the roost, you're going to feel like you need to show what you're about again. But you need to show this in a way that really shows off your sportsmanship and your love of competition, that competition can be a very healthy thing, and that it's not necessarily about dominating or putting people in their place or making people eat your dust. Taurus, Jupiter in Gemini is going to introduce more whimsy, more play into what is pretty much a methodical approach that you take in life. Now, remember, we've been talking about the word play a lot with the zodiac sign of Gemini, but we also need to invoke that Gemini is a mutable sign. What does that mean? Mutable signs are signs that are changeable or even accommodating. Now, Taurus, you were born under a fixed sign, so fixed signs, just like it sounds, are not mutable, they're not changeable, and they're not particularly accommodating. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to get your way all the time, but it does mean that you have a set approach to life. You have a set way of doing things. And if you're born under the astrological sign of Taurus, this set way of doing things has been under great challenges ever since Uranus, the planet of revolution and change, entered your zodiac sign in 2018. So in some ways, that's made Taurians more open to alternative approaches or being more spontaneous in their lives. And in other ways, it's made Taurians more fixed, more standing the ground, more, I'm tired of this craziness that's coming from Uranus. This is the way it needs to be done, and I'm going to insist that this is the way that it needs to be done. Now, seeing that Uranus has been in your sign for a number of years, I imagine you've swung like a pendulum back and forth between those two places. But what Jupiter in Gemini is going to be doing is introducing more whimsy, more spontaneity. Actually, let's talk about more curiosity and wondering what if. Jupiter in Gemini is going to introduce a little bit more what if into your life, into the way that you methodically approach things. Now, where is it going to be introducing these ideas? It's going to be introducing these ideas in the area of security and money. Taurus, you might have gotten to a point where you've gotten a little bit stale in your formula of success. You might even have been so steady that you're actually losing ground instead of gaining it. So what Jupiter in Gemini is going to do is bring in alternatives, options, and other points of view. Harrowing ideas for people born under the zodiac sign of Taurus. Okay, I'm having a little bit of fun with you. But what it means is that you're thinking of reorganizing or rethinking your money or your source of security. Now, if you were born under, I don't know, like a Virgo or even an Aquarius, you would be like, okay, why not? That sounds like a good idea. Let's see what would happen if we went and did this. All right. And remember when we're talking about the zodiac sign of Gemini, Geminis are very much, well, it could be this way, it could be that way. Let's try it this way. Let's try it that way. Okay, so there is a kind of ambiguity, or let's see it from both sides, is to the way that a Gemini approaches matters. And that's something that as a Taurus, you're not really a big fan of. But you will realize as the year gets underway that maybe some of your habitual approaches to things have outlived their usefulness, that maybe you need to rethink some things. And as an earth sign, that can be a little frightening because it's like, oh, what if I mess up something that I've been doing, that's been consistent? And maybe it's not doing as much, but it's been consistent. What you need to do is just remember the Gemini energy. Gemini energy isn't an absolute. It's not going to be like, you have to change everything, Taurus, you have to walk out on this, you have to, change that, everything must go and you must be. This is not Gemini. I want you to think along the lines of adjusting instead of changing. Just kind of like, what if we tweaked it a little bit? What if we moved it over here? What if we asked someone a question? Okay, and maybe that person gave us an answer, and we're going to sit with that answer and sort of compare and contrast to what we are now currently holding in our mind. The more that you can be open to that, but more like to be playful with it. It's almost like a kid who's starting to go into a swimming pool. At first, they're very uncertain and whatever. And the parent is like, come on, we're on the kiddie end of the pool. You can walk down the steps into the pool. And the child walks down the steps in the pool and maybe gets onto a floating device. No one's asking you to go and do a cannonball off the diving board and to make a big splash. Okay, no, this is like a kid wading into a pool. If you can take on that idea that the changes you want to make in terms of finances or the way that you've set up your security to sort of adjust, maybe take the belt out a notch or maybe in a notch. If you enter into that kind of a spirit for the year that Jupiter will be in the zodiac sign of Gemini, I think you're going to find yourself discovering a lot of things that you find delightful, uncovering alternatives that are more than just an option, but actually have some viability to them. And you may be making adjustments that are long overdue and enjoying more rather than less. For those of you who are born under Gemini, lucky you, and congratulations, because Jupiter is traveling through your zodiac sign from May 25th until June 9th, 2025. Now, Jupiter is a planet that I often associate with the wind. One of my favorite images for Jupiter entering a zodiac sign is imagine that you're on a boat, a sailboat, and that it's experiencing dead calm. What is dead calm? Dead calm is when there is no wind going on at all. And even the current isn't much of a current. It's when a boat, a sail, has just sort of like stopped in the water and maybe is drifting a little bit. And people are kind of like wondering, where are we going? When's the wind going to pick up? And maybe a few people have even picked up an oar and are trying to like row the boat a little bit like this. But the boat is not being moved. It's rather sort of like staying put, and it's either inert or it's adrift. Well, what happens when Jupiter comes into your zodiac sign, and here you are, Gemini, and you're an air sign, what happens is the wind picks up. All of a sudden, the wind picks up, and it fills the sail, and it begins to propel your vessel forward. And that's the thing that I want you to think of with Jupiter traveling through your zodiac sign this year. Now, this is going to benefit you Geminis who basically want to get to your destination. Maybe you were trying to form a relationship. Maybe you were trying to get somewhere in your career life. Maybe you were dealing with a creative enterprise or collaboration, and it just went stale. There was just like no interest. So if you have that idea in mind, it can be a vision, it can be a goal, it can be a destination. If you have that idea in mind, then you know how you want to steer your vessel. And so Jupiter coming into your zodiac sign is very good because you can see off in the distance, there's the harbor, there are the cliffs, there's the mountain, there's the land I want to visit. And now you can steer in that direction and you can be like, ha ha, the wind has filled my sail and I'm going places. Okay, so this is going to benefit Geminis who feel like they are going places. Now, if you're one of those Geminis who's a bit sort of confused or you're not quite sure or you're non-committal about things, well, the boat can sort of end up going around in circles or just going off in some kind of direction. That's why I will often advise when Jupiter is about to enter your sign is to really make a list of goals, a list of destinations, so you know where to direct this energy. All right. And Geminis need to direct this energy. Now, there are some zodiac signs in which Jupiter sort of travels on through and it opens up its bag of candy and it tosses it out to everyone and things like that. But that's not really what's going to happen with Gemini. You need to sort of bring the direction because Jupiter is going to move you in that direction. But what's really wonderful is that you will get benefits. And benefits, being an air sign, are going to come through other people. They're not benefits that you will earn on your own or achieve by yourself. They're done through and with other people. This is how all air signs enjoy their good fortune and their higher purpose in life. Let's also remember that Jupiter is the planet of higher education and of government. All right, so you could expect benefits dealing with higher education. You might have applied for a scholarship, a grant, a loan, or financial aid. Here we're going into the realm of government and maybe even lending institutions. But let's say you applied for a scholarship, a grant, a loan, financial aid, help through an agency, you're going to get it. Okay, you basically can rely on a certain yes, and that's a very good thing. And another good thing is that Jupiter is the planet that rules over justice. He's named after the Roman god Jupiter, and Jupiter presided over the courts and presided over justice in ancient Rome. So if you are the injured party, be it in a court of law or be it in the court of public opinion, if you are the injured party, then you will be protected and compensated for any aggravation you had to endure with Jupiter now moving through your zodiac sign. So this sounds like good news, and it is good news. I mean, Jupiter brings good things. Jupiter brings benevolence. Jupiter brings good news. But the thing that you have to remember about Jupiter is that Jupiter just doesn't unconditionally fund your life with wonderful things. All right? Jupiter is a planet that's very much associated to morality. Essentially, we can sort of apply the Santa Claus principle to Jupiter moving through your zodiac sign this year. You know how Santa Claus is, carrying around a bag full of toys and he's going to give them to children all around the world in this like marathon insane, overnight reindeer sled ride. But anyway, Santa Claus comes and visits and gives good things to people. And Jupiter is often regarded in astrology as the Santa Claus of astrology. But the part that they forget about Jupiter being the Santa Claus of astrology is that Jupiter, like Santa Claus, knows who's been naughty and who's been nice. So, if you've been a nice Gemini, if you have tried to do good by other people, spoken well of other people, loved thy neighbor, give unto others as you would have others give unto you, if you've been a good person who has done good things by others, then yes, you will be richly rewarded. But if you're one of those Geminis who's been a little naughty and has not done well by other people, well, at the end of the year, there will be a lump of coal, sitting at the bottom of your stocking. For people born under the zodiac sign of Cancer, Jupiter is going to have a very behind-the-scenes and subtle impact on your horoscope this year. What Jupiter is going to do in Gemini is get you to revisit the family narrative. I think that's the best way that I can describe it. Cancers, as we all know, are famous for their love of family. They're famous for their love of their mother, and the family that they love are their bloodlines family. Okay, so it's their kin, it's their relatives, it's their parents. Cancers are famous for this love. And Cancer, because it's ruled by the moon, also has a tendency to be nostalgic because the moon rules over memory, sentimental because the moon has emotional recall of things that were younger in life, and very strongly sympathetic, very loving. Cancers are also tremendously creative. It's a wonderful zodiac sign. But that narrative of the family, and not just your own childhood, but intergenerational narrative of the family, how things have been passed down from one generation to the next, the trials and tribulations that a former generation faced, and the sacrifices they had to make to create you and the security and the love and the stability you now enjoy. There's that aspect to Cancer's devotion and relationship to the family. Or as a Cancer, you might have dealt with previous generations who really messed up, okay, and who made a lot of big mistakes. And you might be the generation that's paying for them or trying to survive them, learn from them, or maybe even move on. So what can happen with Cancers, because again, they are associated to the moon, and the moon is memory. It's dream, not dream as in vision, but a dream that you had at night. The moon rules over cravings of the body, and the moon also rules over habits, the things that you do habitually. Because the moon, as we all know, is the only planet in the sky that changes its appearance dramatically from a couple of days to another couple of days. In fact, in the span of 1 month, we will see the moon begin dark, grow full, begin to diminish, become dark, and start again. So this idea of a cycle or even recycling is very lunar. It's very Cancerian in its notion. Jupiter is entering the zodiac sign of Gemini. And there's that playful quality to Gemini. And like a child that doesn't want to leave things alone, it's not going to leave things alone. But here I see it more nuanced. Here I see it more subtle. What's going to happen is that during this time that Jupiter is in Gemini, you're going to be revisiting the family narrative. Now, there's not going to be any great exposures or divulgences that are going to be made. It's not going to be something that gothic, where you discover a long buried secret about your family. But what it will be is that it might come up in conversation. Let's say your father was a very remote person, a very unknowable person. And you, as your father's child, have some very set ideas about what that is. You might have felt like unrecognized or unappreciated by your father, or maybe there was always a distance to the two of you. You might have a conversation with an uncle and aunt, a sibling of your father's, or a friend, or maybe an old schoolmate who knew your father when. And this person might share with you a story, or a number of stories, because maybe now you're curious, but a number of stories in which the father of the youth doesn't match the father you were raised by, okay? And this begins to alter, this begins to change the way that you look at this person. Maybe it brings a warmth or an affection. Maybe it brings an identification. Maybe it brings like, I wonder why my father never told me these things, or wow, my dad was into comic books. I don't know. It's going to bring up something like that. That's going to get you to view this family member differently than the way you viewed them before. Let's say there's an uncle or an aunt or an old friend or whatever who talks about your mother. And let's say maybe your mother was a tremendously self-sacrificing parent who always put everything in front of her, and that's the way that she lived her life. Well, you may hear stories. You may come upon letters or things like that. Maybe you find out that your mother had a wonderful, loving relationship with another man who wasn't your father. Or maybe you find out that your mom was a real party girl. Or maybe you find out that mom was not the high school hussy, but, turned heads and things like that. And it's a way that's so different from how you're used to thinking of your mother. What I'm trying to sort of share here is the invocation of an aspect of someone that you know by rote, that you have familiar associations with, but you're now beginning to look at differently and even in a more human manner, that's not so much parent and child or, evil stepsister or something like that, but you begin to see them in a more human manner. And this is going to impact the way that you relate to your family. It could also be something as simple as traveling down the same path that your parent traveled down. Maybe you're at an age when your parent got married. Maybe you're at an age where your parent had their first kid. And sometimes it's only when we travel down the same path, but in the same footsteps, that we can recognize how similar we are to someone in our family, but we can also recognize how we approach things differently. And as I said, this is going to change the way that you deal with your narrative. Maybe it makes you more forgiving of your parents. Maybe it makes you more embarrassed. Maybe it gives you a sense of camaraderie and closeness that you never really had before. So there's a bond that's formed. And this is something that will visit you and resuscitate, enliven, and enrich the relationship that you have with these people, because now perhaps you're seeing them more as people and not as familiar fixtures in your life. Jupiter is in its joy in the solar horoscopes of people born under the zodiac sign of Leo. So that makes Jupiter really good, all right? May not be quite as good as Jupiter in Gemini, but it's no slouch. It's up there with it. Now, what does it mean for Jupiter to be in its joy in your solar horoscope? What it means is that Jupiter is in an elevated position in your solar horoscope. And it's in an elevated position and also an aspiring position. It's moving up towards the highest point of the chart. So this is a year that brings great aspiration for people born under the zodiac sign of Leo. Now, a lot of times aspiration and ambition are confused. Ambition is when you have a drive for something. You have a drive and you must succeed and you must reach the top and, beat up anyone who gets in your way. Okay, you're ambitious. And people can be ambitious because they're driven to be the best. People can also be ambitious because they want something, the accolade, the achievement, the prize, just because they want it. That doesn't necessarily mean that success is going to be a fulfillment. Success can be registered as beating other people to the prize and holding it up and saying it's mine. But if you're driven by something like, I want it because someone else wants it, or I want it because I never had this in life, or I want it to prove myself, this drive isn't built on an aspirational place. Aspiration currently is understood in a way of like aspiring to. And at first you might be like, what is the difference between aspiration and ambition? The difference is aspiration is, I can see myself doing that. Okay. Why can I see myself doing that? I can see myself doing that because that is a realization of a talent. I can see myself doing that because I have the ability. I can see myself doing that because it seems like a natural unfoldment of who I am. Aspiration, working with the idea of, think of a bird not flying, flapping its wings, but gliding in the air and letting the air currents lift it higher and higher and higher. It can do that because the bird has the wings. The bird has the ability. The bird is built that way. That's what birds do. And so they ride on these lifting breezes to go higher and higher and higher. So it's not I want to do that because I have to have it. It's like, this is something that's natural to me. It's not quite a calling. A calling can be like, I have this calling to go up. It's not really that. Aspiration is just, you can see a natural unfoldment. You can see a natural progression of where you are. I'm here to where I want to be or there. You can see a natural progression from here to there, which is higher. And so Jupiter in Gemini for Leos this year is blessing this. Okay. It's saying this is very doable, along with a very strong suggestion that now is the time to go and do this. All right. So Jupiter in Gemini will bring people into your life. All right. These other people who are coming into your life are going to be coaches. They're going to be mentors. They're going to be patrons. And they're going to be people who have pinned their hopes on you. So what that means is, on one hand, they recognize in you a special talent, a special ability. Oh, Leo, let me introduce you to a friend of mine because the two of you, are so on the same page and this person can help you fulfill your aspirations. Or let me introduce you to a friend who will introduce you to a friend. This person wants to help you to be the best that you can be, like to cultivate a talent, an ability, a skill. They see you as really going somewhere, and they want to cultivate this. And so they've also pinned their hopes on you. They have what Charles Dickens called high expectations. And that's a good thing. As a Leo, you like that. You like high expectations, and you want to be the best person that you can be. Your ruling planet is the sun, and this is what the sun is responsible in everyone's horoscope, is becoming the best person that you can be. And so this is something that, because your ruler's the sun, you absolutely identify with. Jupiter is a planet of morality, of morals. There's always a moral to the tale. But Jupiter, interestingly, is also a planet that can introduce a moral predicament. This also falls under the auspices of Jupiter. And so the moral predicament that you might find yourself in this year, with people pinning their hopes on you and having high expectations, but they're not just, cheering you on. They're actually opening doors, making introductions, helping you to realize your high expectations, and you are in attunement with them, okay, because of Jupiter's placement throughout the year. But what you want to be careful of is that those expectations haven't overridden your own. Or in other words, someone's holding in their mind a higher expectation of yourself than you have. And so that might bring up questions of like, wow, can I really realize that or live up to that? But at the end of the day, it's that person's expectation and not yours. Remember, you're a Leo. If someone holds a bar up higher with an expectation and you see it as a natural development of or fulfillment of who you are, this is great. This is working wonderfully for you. But if someone's holding up a bar of an expectation like this, and this is the way they see you, remember, you're born under a zodiac sign that puts me first, okay? And people make jokes about being egotistical and things like that, but Leos stand for individuality. Individuality is something that Leos value. And if it weren't for the Leos in the world, we would all be cookie cutter cutouts. We would be duplicates of one another. No zodiac sign puts as high a value on individuality as a Leo does. So if it's this person's expectation, but it's not your expectation, okay, maybe this person's here and you're going over here with your expectation, you have to be true to the way you see yourself unfolding, all right? You have to be true to the way you see yourself evolving or progressing. And that might not be on the same page. And you have to find a way of making that doable. That doesn't mean you have to be like, I've got to be me, or anything like that. But it does mean using that Gemini, that beautiful Gemini ability to take the tension out of an interchange, to be conversational, to break the ice, that bonhomie, which is such a wonderful combination of both fire and air, of introducing some humor to the situation, and also thanking the person for having that expectation and talking about how you see it. And so mixing the gratitude, but also staying true to yourself. This is how you will aspire to and achieve the things that you want to achieve. And being a Leo with Jupiter and Gemini, you're probably going to do it without burning a single bridge. For Virgos, Jupiter in Gemini occupies a prominent position in your astrological chart. In fact, it occupies a pinnacle position in your solar horoscope. So Jupiter in Gemini is going to bring a promotion, rewards, and/or recognition, probably all of the above. So with Jupiter so highly placed in your solar horoscope, this is what we call in astrology a fame position. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to become Kim Kardashian overnight or anything along those lines, but what it does mean is that you will be recognized for what you do and in a prominent way. You might be a head stewardess or on one of those air carriers, or you might be promoted to a supervisor position, or you might even become CEO of a major company. But the idea of being elevated to a top position, occupying a place of prominence, occupying a place of recognition, a place of admiration where those admire all the things that you've done, occupying this place is going to be very, very powerful for Virgos this year. Now, this sounds like a dream come true if you were born under Leo. This sounds like a dream come true if you were born under Sagittarius. This sounds like a dream come true if you were born under, let's say, even a Libra. Okay, this idea of like of people admiring and looking up to you, and what a lovely place to be. Okay, now if you're born under Virgo, nothing, and I repeat, nothing could be more anxiety producing. What it is, and why it's going to be anxiety producing for Virgos, is that Virgos prefer a power behind the throne position. Virgos like being the advisor. Virgos like being the person who does the fact checking. Virgos like being the person who organizes the information and puts things together. Okay, that they can weigh in with an observation or something they have to say, that they can weigh in with a criticism, that Virgos can weigh in with a question, and a well-timed one that gets people to stop what they're doing and sort of reflect on the next step that they're going to take. Virgo is very comfortable in these advising, these counseling, even what could be described as administrative or bureaucratic positions, all right? Because you're responsible for great success, but you're not this one sitting on the throne. So people would be like, well, Virgo's problem was sitting on the throne. What's wrong with sitting on the throne, Virgo? And Virgos know that for people who sit on the throne, that they can be overthrown. Okay, in other words, they can be thrown out of that position. They can make a mistake. They can overstay their welcome. They can become tyrannical. They can be full of vainglory. Virgo tends towards the modest, and Virgo tends towards keeping a low profile. Modest is keeping the head down so that you don't call too much attention to yourself, but it can also mean getting things done the way that you want them done because you know how to work that administration, or you know how to work that bureaucracy like nobody's business. You know all the ins and outs, you know all the loopholes. You can affect the changes that you want to see made without calling any attention to it. Virgos are much more comfortable in this type of position. But if you get into a prominent position, a position where you're the person who's in charge, you can be questioned by other Virgos. You can be undermined. You can be critiqued. You know, people can be eyeing for your spot. Okay, so there's a sort of unease that can happen there that Leos are very, very comfortable with, and they have no problem being in that position. But Virgos get very uncomfortable. They get very nervous occupying that type of position. Virgos can also feel, when they've reached a point of prominence in their life, of feeling like, well, what do they want from me now? This is what performers call performer's anxiety. It's like, what do they want from me now? I did a really great performance, and now they've got expectations, and what do they want from me now? Or worse, how do I top what I just did? Many performers suffer from that, which is like, wow, that was such a great game last night, or that was such a great performance, and how am I ever going to live up to that? Okay, so these are the anxieties that Virgos can experience when they find themselves at the top of the heap. As I said, they're more comfortable with inconspicuous positions. So this is a time when you want to invoke the Gemini energy. Gemini, as we know, is a zodiac sign that deals with friends and with siblings, with playmates. And I really want to bring up the idea of playmates and even peers. This is a period of time when you occupy this position that you don't want to take it all on yourself. You want to share your anxieties or your doubts with a coworker. You want to share your hopes and dreams with a friend. You want to go into a complete meltdown and say, I don't know if I can do this or not, with a family member. Okay, you want to do this with people you love. You want to do this with people you trust. And you want to do this with people who believe in you more than you believe in yourself right now. Because when you do this, you break down what could become a very isolating, pressured position. When you do this, you will realize that you're not alone with all of these pressures. And when you do this, you'll realize that you can truly get by with a little help from your friends. If you're a Libra, Jupiter in Gemini is going to expand your horizons. It's going to open your world. And this is wonderful news. Maybe you've gotten a little bit wearing the blinders close to the two sides of your head. You've gotten a little bit too overly focused on one way of doing things. So Jupiter in Gemini is going to be marvelous. It's going to open your world. It's almost like, imagine a lovely spring day, all right? Imagine a lovely spring day where you open up the windows and you open up the doors, and this beautiful spring breeze circulates throughout your home. You can smell the scents of the wisteria, of the lilac, of the roses. Or maybe your house is near the ocean and you can smell the ocean, on this lovely, lovely spring day. This is what air signs respond to: circulation. Okay, it's the circulation of ideas, it's the circulation of thoughts, it's the circulation of points of view. Gemini is a very conversational zodiac sign. So this might be a period of time in which you are meeting people from different walks of life, from different cultures, people who have different points of view than you do. Maybe you're now working in a venue that allows you to meet with different people, with different backgrounds and different experiences. And as a Libra, this is filling your mind. This circulation of different pasts, this circulation of different histories, but along with it, the circulation of ideas, where you get to maybe even play with ideas or converse about ideas, and you feel yourself mentally stimulated again. Okay, it's been a long time since you felt this. For some of you Libras, you felt very much like you were hanging on the ledge and that you had to hold by. You had to be steadfast to these creeds, to these thoughts, to these ideologies. And here with the doors flown wide open, with the windows lifted, you can take in all of these fresh perspectives, and it's going to enlighten and enrich and restore you in your life. And this is going to be a wonderful feeling. You will also have in your social orbit people who can help you get from here to there. Okay. And this is a little bit like what I was saying with Jupiter in Gemini. If you have a destination in mind, if you have a goal in mind, if you have a place where you want to be, you are now meeting people who can help you get there. They can outfit you with the skills. They can accompany you along the way. They can be wonderful companions. They can suggest alternative routes or other ways of doing things. They can get you to question playfully the way that you did things before. And you can feel like you can kind of unburden these old ideas and take on, as I was saying before, fresh perspectives. What you may also experience, Libra, during this year that Jupiter is passing through the zodiac sign of Gemini, is a kind of restlessness, a kind of wondering, maybe I can do better. And whenever an air sign asks, maybe I can do better, that's also going to have to do with the people that you're hanging out with. All air signs are pretty much as good as the company they keep. And so, for instance, let's say you're hanging out with also-rans, people who never go all the way or rise to the highest heights, people who've settled for less. If you're hanging out with the also-rans, you may feel like you yourself have become an also-ran. You may feel like you yourself have settled for less. And this is something that's going to be also lurking in the background. Maybe I can do better. Maybe I could have better friends. Maybe I could have a better relationship. Maybe I should be working in a company where people get me and are stimulating to me and who can help me better myself. And these are natural things that you would be feeling with Jupiter passing through the zodiac sign of Gemini. So you might be looking to trade up, socially. You might be looking to get a better set of friends. You might be looking to get a better set of colleagues. You might even be looking to get a better set of patrons. But Jupiter in Gemini is also going to introduce a couple of moral quandaries for you this year. Jupiter is the planet that's very much associated to morality. What's good, what's bad? How do we judge good and bad? And a lot of times, the way that we revisit what's good or bad is through a moral quandary. In other words, the easy answer of this is good or this is bad, it's not as easy, it's not as satisfying, it doesn't really apply. A moral quandary gets us to expand our mental blinders. It gets us to rethink our think. And so ironically, because Gemini deals with friends, with acquaintances, with people you might know or getting to know, ironically, you might find yourself becoming friends with people you envy. Okay, remember, there's always a quality of rivalry with Gemini. That comes from Gemini being the zodiac sign of the twins, and the whole idea of sibling rivalry is really encoded in this zodiac sign. So let's take this as an example. Let's say you become best friends this year with someone who is the spouse of someone you are absolutely in love with, all right? Let's say you're in love with this person's spouse, you're in love with this person's partner, but you were not the person who was chosen. Okay, they went with this person, and it's the spouse who becomes your best friend, or it's the spouse who believes that you're best friends. Okay, and let's say it's the spouse who keeps inviting you over, and the only reason you're seeing this person that you're madly in love with is because the spouse keeps inviting you over to dinner or to go on vacations or trips or something along these lines. And let's say over the course of this year, it gets even more of a moral quandary, because the spouse begins divulging to you, sharing with you very intimate confidences. Maybe they begin to divulge or share with you their doubts or anxieties about their relationship, their doubts or anxieties about their spouse, just enough that it could put you in a position where you could sort of, make this person feel like they shouldn't be as in love or something like that. That could be a temptation. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it could be a temptation. This could be a quandary, a moral quandary that Jupiter in Gemini introduces, that the reason you get to spend so much time with the person you're in love with is because the spouse thinks you and the spouse are best friends. Okay, and what do you do with that? This would be a moral quandary that could be introduced by Jupiter in Gemini. Another moral quandary that comes to mind is, let's say you were up for a position at work and you didn't get it. This other person did. but yet this other person keeps coming to you for advice. This other person keeps saying to you, you're so good at this. They really should have hired you. So what would you advise that I do? And you may feel like, betraying yourself by showing this person how to do this job, or even directing this person to do the job better than they would have ever done it on their own. And part of you might be like, you should say to this person, listen, handle your own business, the job or whatever, but you are invested, like you want this company to work, or you want this project to be a success. So you're feeling on one hand, that you don't want to let everyone down, but then on the other hand, you're the reason why this person is doing as well as they're doing. These are the moral quandaries that I want to share with you as just kind of like ideas of what Jupiter in Gemini could bring for you Libras out there. The whole point of this is to put you in a place where you're making decisions and choices that you wouldn't typically make, that where the issues are very, very powerful ones for you, but also the idea that a moral quandary introduces you to yourself. There are people who moralize, they sermonize about all these things, about what's right and what's wrong. And they can do this without any self-reflection. They're very into telling other people what's right or wrong. What happens with a moral quandary is that it puts you in the crosshairs. It puts you at a crossroads, actually, with your conscience. And what's wonderful about that is that when you're in a place where you're in a crossroads with your conscience, that's when your consciousness is raised. And so this is how Jupiter and Gemini can introduce moral quandaries that introduce you to yourself. For everyone born under Scorpio, Jupiter in Gemini is going to be messing around with the roster of people that you depend upon in your life. In other words, the people that you rely on, the people you've always trusted, the people who have always shown you the way. Jupiter in Gemini is going to be moving these figures around. Now, how is it moving these figures around? Probably because it's going to be introducing new figures, new people for you to rely on, new people for you to depend on, new people for you to trust. And these people may actually be more reliable. They may be more dependable, and they may be better people. But being a Scorpio, and in some ways you mirror Taurus with this idea, you are very loyal to the people that you have set up in these positions in your life. Okay, you're very loyal to the therapist you've been seeing for 23 years. Okay, you're very loyal to the physician you've been seeing for X amount of time. You're very loyal to your financial consultant. You're very loyal to the people who have been there for you through the difficult times. So Jupiter Gemini isn't bringing a difficult time, okay? Scorpios know how to handle themselves in a crisis. Okay, you're a Mars-ruled sign. Bring on the crisis and you know exactly what to do. Where Scorpios can get into trouble is when the fixtures in their life are being messed with. And that's what's going on with Jupiter in Gemini. You may be beginning to realize that maybe you've been seeing this therapist too long and they've been having the same topic of conversation with you. You may realize that maybe your financial advisor isn't that up to date or well informed. You may realize that the person that you confide in has sort of been repeating, yeah, no, I get it, and not really listening to you in the way that they used to listen to you before. And you might be feeling like you want some fresh blood, that you want some fresh ears, that you want to be talking to people who get you now and not talking to people who've grown so used to your problems, your anxieties, your worries, that it all sounds like the same thing. So as a Scorpio, these fixtures are being changed. What's also happening, because remember that Gemini is ruled by Mercury, and Mercury is the planet of the mind. It's really the planet of the way that we think. What's happening with this infusion of mercurial energy through the zodiac sign of Gemini is you are rethinking. You are revisiting firmly held beliefs, firmly held convictions, things that you've always relied upon. You may even be revisiting firmly held obsessions or firmly held fears. And what you might be realizing with Jupiter sort of bringing a breath of fresh air to these corners of your horoscope is that you're not obsessed in the way that you used to be obsessed. Maybe you're not even interested in being obsessed. There might have been a sort of fatalistic way that you approached life, and you may be feeling not so fatalistic, or that things aren't so entrenched. So the way that you're used to looking at the world is changing, along with the people that you've depended on. And in some ways, it could be argued, Scorpio, people who reinforced this perspective, people who reinforced this point of view. Along with that changing, along with that altering, along with that shifting its shape, is your own emotional relationship to the way that things need to be. And so this is, on one hand, a little unsettling, because Scorpios can be a bit absolutist in their fixity. But at the same time, you might also be experiencing a bit of relief. Maybe you've grown tired of having to be the person who's obsessed. And when I talk about change, which of course is always a frightening word for any of the fixed signs, remember that Gemini is a mutable sign, so it embraces change. Geminis swing from change to change like Tarzan swinging from vine to vine in the jungle, all right? I mean, I've swung this far and I'll reach out for another vine, that's so, but this might actually be appealing to you. And so as you seek out a new therapist or a financial advisor or a new confidant, as you retire the person who used to hold that role and seek out someone with a fresher, newer, maybe even younger or different perspective than yours, get ready. Get ready for Jupiter in Gemini to breathe new life into the areas of your chart that until this year have been hands off. Get away from there. Get ready for Jupiter and Gemini to breathe new life into these areas, and that instead of you becoming more resistant, you might become more attracted to the idea of doing things in a new and different way. For Sagittarius, Jupiter traveling through your opposite sign, it's sometimes called your partner sign of Gemini, famously is supposed to bring a new love into your life or refresh and restore an old one. And yes, I've seen this happen a number of times. Jupiter traveling through the opposite sign can bring someone into your life who has great romantic appeal and actually even sweeps you off your feet, which would be interesting for people born under Sagittarius because they're the ones who usually do the sweeping and are not as oftentimes swept. So Jupiter and Gemini may be bringing a whole new love interest into your life, which of course is going to be very appealing to you because you're always into a new romance, a new adventure, a new encounter. And the further away this person lives from you, of course, the better. Okay, so these are the things that you can certainly look forward to if you were born under the zodiac sign of Sagittarius. What can also happen is Jupiter and Gemini may restore or bring back those feelings that you've had in a relationship. Maybe they bring back the old love and passions that you had, in the before time, the old passions or loves that you had, or it introduces a new chapter to your relationship that you might find much more appealing and much more fulfilling. So these are the wonderful, terrific things that can happen with Jupiter passing through your opposite sign of Gemini. And this is pretty much the traditional interpretation. But what we also have to keep in mind with Jupiter going through Gemini are a couple of ideas. First of all, Jupiter is your ruling planet. So Jupiter is in your opposite sign. So essentially, Jupiter is as far away from you as it can be in a chart when it is transiting or passing through your opposite sign. If you're like, I'm Sagittarius, I'm over here, then Gemini is over here, and Jupiter is over here. So Jupiter, being your ruling planet, is drawing you over to here. Okay, you are drawn to the idea of partner and partnering. All right, this is going to be something that's very important. But if we go back to the idea of, here's Sagittarius and here's Jupiter and Gemini over here, what you have is a split focus. Okay. And that's because it's the nature of an opposition. You can stand by yourself or you can stand by partner. Okay. And so this idea of having a split focus and maybe perhaps confronted with an idea with the challenge of how do I reconcile or work out this split focus. An easy way to think of a split focus, or rather the first thing that comes to mind, is I either side with me or I side with my partner. And there may be a feeling that if I side with me, I'm letting down my partner, or if I side with my partner, I'm letting down me. So this might be a moral quandary that people who are born under Sagittarius might be experiencing with Jupiter, your ruling planet, passing through your opposite sign. How do I work out me in a relationship to another person without thinking too much about myself and letting down the other person, or thinking about too much about the other person and letting down me? What this can also bring out is a feeling of, should I stay or should I go? Should I stay with this person or should I leave? Should I go? Would this person be better without me? Would I be better without this person? And with the Jupiter in Gemini, and it's in your ruling, Jupiter being your ruling planet, it's going to be like, go, 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 go. So you might be feeling like, I should go, and then you should be like, no, I should stay. And so you may find yourself in a sort of ping pong match or living like a ping pong ball being paddled by both sides. Now, because we're talking about the partner sign, which is the opposite sign, okay, it's the person in the opposite camp, which says a lot. And it's kind of interesting about partners, because in partnerships, you're not always on the same page. You can actually often be at opposite ends of things. So that's astrologically how it can be represented with planets transiting through your opposite sign. We talked about the split focus. Do I side with me or the other person? Okay, we've talked about that. But what we also need to introduce here is the idea that your partner might be feeling the Jupiter. Okay, your partner might be feeling the restlessness, or your partner might be feeling like they should be going. And so the partner might be, spending time away, or maybe it's a long distance relationship and you don't feel the closeness anymore. And so that might be something that's coming up. And as a Sagittarius, you may be asking yourself if you can really rely on that. If someone wants to be free, shouldn't I let them be free? I mean, freedom is something that you very much value. So you would understand that coming from another person. But you might be questioning the reliability of other people during this period of time that Jupiter is going through Gemini. So if you're not experiencing that traditional romance that Jupiter in your opposite sign is slated to bring, if you're not experiencing that, there can be this, do I stay or do I go? Or is my partner questioning, do I stay or do I go? And then what do you do with that? What's going on here is an old observation of the Lebanese poet Khalil Gibran, when he talks about marriage or partnership, and this could be romantic or business or creative. Khalil Gibran counsels, let there be spaces in your togetherness. And that stayed with me after I first read it decades ago, but let there be spaces in your togetherness. Too much time like this, two people don't blend in to make a composite person. It's two people, okay? And you can be next to each other, or you can be distant with one another or next to each other again. I mean, relationships are always moving in these gradations, physically, emotionally, etc. Okay, so So if this is a period of time in which your paths are diverging, they may diverge and they may stay diverged through this time. But this may also be a time in which your paths diverge and then reunite or come back together again. And that's something that I also want you to keep in mind, Sagittarius, during this time that your ruling planet, Jupiter, is traveling through Gemini. You may have paths diverging, you may be going in different directions, but sometimes what's needed is space in your togetherness and to let yourselves diverge in a relationship only to meet each other again further down the road in a wonderful and beautiful reunion. Capricorns are going to have quite a time of it with Jupiter in the zodiac sign of Gemini. Now, if you're born in a Capricorn, you're used to sticking to the plan, all right? You have this plan of how things are supposed to unfold, and maybe what you've been experiencing recently is that they're not sort of going as planned, all right? So you may have doubled down on the way that things are supposed to work out. They're supposed to go according to this fashion, and I'm going to double down like this. With Jupiter now entering into the zodiac sign of Gemini, you may find the new and different irresistible. In other words, you might find that you just cannot resist trying out something that's new and different. And essentially what Jupiter is doing for Capricorns this year is that it's turning all of you mountain goats into Geminis. Okay, so the typically solid, stern, sober, Capricorn, all hard work and ambitious. Okay, you are now all going to be Geminis. And this is something that doesn't really make it into a lot of textbooks that are written about Capricorn. I mean, you see the sage-looking goat climbing to the highest heights of a mountain, and maybe peering over the domain with a cold wind blowing and being Capricorn alone at the top. Okay, this is usually the typical description of a Capricorn. What we forget about Capricorn is that they're goats. And what I love, again, I guess this is the episode where I talked about the Animal Planet shows that I watch, but what I love about Capricorns is the goat. And think of a young goat, how playful a young goat is. They're hipping and hopping and they're kind of like wild and crazy. They're hopping all over and they play with one another and they're springing, constantly, and they're hysterical. If you get to look at kids, which I think is the term for a young goat. Okay. And so this is what Jupiter in Gemini is going to do. It's going to bring out the kid goat in all the Capricorns. Now, don't worry, you're not going to be like leaving, that ball and chain that you call your destiny, that you drag behind you, but you're going to get a little bit more kiki. You're going to get a little bit more jumping to and fro, and you're going to get a bit more giggly. Okay, and you get to do it in public, and you don't have to do it behind closed doors. Capricorns are going to have this kind of like flush of youth, this flush of Gemini energy that's coursing through their horoscopes. The other thing that's going to transform all you Capricorns into Geminis for the year as a result of Jupiter passing through the zodiac sign of the twins is your attraction to bright, shiny objects. Not only will you find new and different ideas irresistible, but you'll be attracted to bright, shiny objects, much like Atalanta was when the golden apple came rolling across the path that she was running on, and she, found the gold of the apple totally irresistible, and she had to run and go and fetch it. Okay, so you may be having this experience. You will definitely be having this experience of being drawn to bright, shiny objects and really enjoying them. But what can happen when you're drawn to bright, shiny objects or to golden apples that come rolling across your path is that you can gather one or two or three or four, and then you start gathering more and more and more until you have a full armload of golden apples, okay, of golden opportunities. Now, what Geminis have, which is superior to Capricorn, is Geminis have this remarkable ability to hold different thoughts all at once. Okay, they can do different things all at once. They can multitask, but multitask isn't the best description of it. They know how to juggle. They know how to juggle ideas, how to juggle priorities. They know how to spin plates, like what you see at the circus when the person gets one plate spinning and another plate spinning and another plate spinning, and they run back and forth and keep them all going so that they don't come crashing down to the floor and become broken china. Okay, so Geminis know how to do this. They were built for doing this. Capricorns do not, okay? Capricorns do not know how to juggle different ideas or different obligations all at the same time. So a Capricorn, you can go and you can collect the golden fruit, but you can sort of hold it and become weighed down or burdened by it, because that's how Saturn responds to things like that. And the fruit can spoil. It can grow rotten. And so what you want to do this year, Capricorn, is work on your Gemini muscles, okay? Work on the idea of juggling different ideas, different priorities, different commitments all at the same time. Now, you might not be able to like juggle 15 of them all at the same time. You might start out with 2, okay? But from 2, you can go to 3 and maybe 4. But this is something that you want to develop, is this kind of like mental flexibility, adaptability, and finesse, the finesse of holding in mind different things all at the same time. And what you also want to do is not really abandon your Capricorn ways, okay? You don't want to be like, oh, I'm going to be a Gemini now. No, don't do that. Develop Gemini mental muscle, okay? But don't abandon your Capricorn ways. And that's because you can be drawn to and collect bright, shiny objects, but bright, shiny objects tend to have a short shelf life. Or you can have the seeds of all these different ideas, but if you don't nurture and cultivate those seeds so that they can grow, then those ideas never come to anything. So splitting your focus between the different objects, or between the short term and the long term, splitting focus is a really good faculty for you to develop. And it's one that, in true Capricorn fashion, once you see the necessity for it, you will also soon master it. If you're an Aquarius, you're going to be blessed with all kinds of likes, clicks, and followers, courtesy of Jupiter passing through the zodiac sign of Gemini. All of a sudden, you're going to find people listening on your every word. You're going to find people really wanting to know more about what you think and what your appraisal of a certain thing is. Your popularity is going to expand. Okay, this is what Jupiter does. Jupiter is in an air sign like Gemini. Gemini is an air sign just like Aquarius. And so Jupiter can bring popularity. It can bring people who are on your side, people who are promoting your views, and people who are championing the things that you have to say. Now, for an Aquarius, this can be a bit of a dubious position. It's a bit of a dubious position because Aquarius is always shy about the limelight. Aquarians, which is interesting and ironic, since Aquarians often find themselves in a position of leadership, but they can be very shy about taking on that type of position. And with so many people in your corner, you're going to feel like you have to live up to their expectations. The wonderful thing about that is that you are a communicative sign. You're a sign that really understands the politics of a group, and you're a zodiac sign that's very interested in the way that other people think and the opinions that other people have. So you're a sign that can do a lot of questions and doesn't feel like it has to have the answer. You can take down what people are saying. You can take down what their input is. And this is going to be very beneficial to you. But at the same time, you're also going to feel very responsible to the people who are supporting you, responsible to advocate for them, responsible to be a proper mouthpiece, responsible to taking their side in return. And this can get a little tricky for an Aquarius. For Aquarius, the truth is the most important thing. And truth has a tendency to be an everlasting, eternal truth with an Aquarius. The simple way of putting it is that Aquarians tend to stand on principle. Okay, so this is the way that things should be done for the good of the future or progress of society or for the benefit of all humanity. Okay, Aquarians think in these very big picture global terms. There is no such thing as a simple action without it setting off a domino row of reactions and consequences. So Aquarians are very steady about the way that they want to move through a situation. And again, when they garner support, they're going to feel allegiance to that. But what's also fascinating about the zodiac sign of Aquarius is that of all the air signs, Gemini, Libra, Aquarius, these are the air signs of the zodiac, Aquarians also feel the most like an outsider. In other words, if an Aquarius were to start a club, they would feel within months of having started it that they didn't belong in it. So there's always an outsider quality to Aquarius. Some people think that Aquarians deliberately choose to be this way. And no, it doesn't come from that. It's this, that Aquarians can see things in terms of the big picture, and seeing things in terms of the big picture can be very sort of utopian in like where we want things to go. But Aquarians also have a very critical faculty as well. They can see the things that are also wrong with the big picture. What Jupiter in Gemini, aside from bringing you lots of likes and clicks and followers, okay, what Jupiter in Gemini is also going to do is that it's also going to sort of heighten the contrary nature of Aquarius. Now, Geminis can be a bit contrary. In fact, Geminis sort of delight in being contrary for contrary's sake. It's what they call being the devil's advocate, or taking the opposite point of view to engage in vigorous debate and fun wordplay. But with Aquarius, those contrarian aspects of Aquarius, which is the commitment to seeing the other side of the situation, an opposite side of a situation. Libra, for instance, wants to hear the other side of the story. Okay, like I heard one story from one person, and now I'm going to hear the other side of the story. Aquarius wants to entertain what would be opposite of what had been built up. Okay, so there can be a contrarian streak to Aquarians. They don't deliberately want to stand outside, but they somehow end up standing outside. Okay, and so for all the likes, clicks, and followers that Jupiter and Gemini will bring, there will also be a contrarian streak as well, which is a feeling that you need to represent what's not being talked about. You need to represent what isn't being espoused by your clicks, likes, and followers. And you need to speak truth. You know, speaking truth to power is something that Aquarians do on a day-to-day basis, whether they're in a position of power or in the position of the rebel. This is what Aquarians do. It's the commitment to truth. On one hand, you'll feel a great fealty to people who are in your corner, but then on the other hand, that might also press you to make more of a point of representing what they might not find appealing, but that they need to know. And so this could be a quandary for you. It will be a quandary for you, but let's make the quandary even more quandrifiable, if such a word. Let's make the quandary more applicable to you. What it's going to do is that typically you would stand for truth and for saying the things that nobody wants to hear, and you would live and die on that. You die on that mountain. You know, this is what Aquarians will do. What the Jupiter in Gemini is going to challenge you to do is to find a way of representing that truth, communicating that truth, perhaps to people who don't want to hear it. The Jupiter in Gemini is going to prevail on you, inspire you to find a way of communicating that affably. In other words, in finding a friendly way of communicating that. Gemini isn't interested in being an outsider, okay? It wants the prerogative of being in and out of a situation, but it never wants to be an outsider. Gemini will always be conversational. Gemini always wants to be interactive with people. And Gemini believes in being in the game. It's better to be in the game than out of the game or sitting on the bench and doing what with yourself. So Gemini, the Jupiter in Gemini will challenge you to find affable and friendly ways of representing truths that people might not be comfortable with, okay? And then it's going to inspire you. It's going to inspire your ingenuity. It's going to inspire your creativity. It's going to inspire your persuasiveness. Okay, so it's not just good enough to say, here's the ugly truth that's made me unpopular. It's like, how do I make this truth appealing to people? How do I get people to see this in a way that they can grasp, embrace, and understand, rather than something that they're going to find impossible or difficult? That is your particular challenge for this year, Aquarius. And it's a challenge that with Jupiter going through the zodiac sign of Gemini, you will be more than up to fulfilling. For everybody born under Pisces, Jupiter will be traveling through that part of your solar chart that has to do with home. So Jupiter, when it's traveling through this angle of the horoscope, usually has a lot to do with moving and relocation. And so the idea of moving and relocating may be something that's very, very prominent for you this year. Maybe it's something you've been talking about for a while. Maybe it's something that you've been wistfully hoping for. Well, this year is when it will take place. Jupiter is known for being very restless, and it doesn't think twice about pulling up stakes and moving on to another location. So if you were thinking along these lines, this period of time that Jupiter is in Gemini is the perfect time to act on those impulses. Now, what may also be happening here is that you'll be returning home. All right. You may be returning to a place where you once lived. Now, we could go Odd Couple with Felix and Oscar about this. Odd Couple was a play that became a comedy series in which two men who are divorcees become roommates and all the hilarity that ensues. But at the end of the series, one of them, Felix, is called back home. He gets to go back home and start up his marriage again, really with a clear understanding of why that marriage wasn't working and why he values it so highly now. So this idea of a return, of something being restored to you, having to deal with home or family, this might be a very strong theme for those of you born under Pisces. So it could be returning home, returning back to a relationship. It could be the restoration of something. Maybe there was a property dispute, or, there was a big fight over Aunt B's knickknacks when she passed away. And you always knew that those knickknacks, she wanted you to have those knickknacks, but some evil sibling came and said, no, the knickknacks are mine. You may find that these knickknacks are restored to you. They're given to you, that it's gone full circle and it's come back to you. So this sort of restoration can be very strong. Returning from an exile, as they probably would have called it in centuries of yore, that you've been exiled to some remote corner of the empire or something like this, and now you receive news that you can return, that you can come back home. So this is part of the theme that will be very, very strong for all of you born under the zodiac sign of the fish. So what are you returning home to? What is being restored? As a Pisces, you may find that things are strange, familiar, that you recognize the terrain, but things aren't where they were when you last departed. So this is something that you're going to have to get used to with Jupiter moving through the zodiac sign of Gemini. What's nice about this is that Jupiter and Gemini being a mutable sign like Pisces, which is a mutable sign, is that this will be a matter of adapting. Okay. This isn't like, here's your new neighborhood. Whoa, deal with it. It's not going to be like that. Okay. But it will be like, wow, things are really different. And so what the mutable signs do, because they're the changeable signs of the zodiac, is that they adapt. So this is something that at first be a little freaked out, or, I can't believe that this is what I'm returning to, or this is how it's being restored to me. But then there's adaptability. Maybe a knickknack or two from Aunt B was broken, and you find just the person who can mend the pieces and put it back together so it looks just like it did, even though you can't help but notice those cracks and wonder how it was broken like that. Okay, but it's a restoration. It looks like it should be the same, but it's different. And it's that mindset that's going to be very much with you this year. And so there's kind of a bringing the past up to date with your present that's going on here. The water signs, Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces, tend towards the past, the nostalgic. Some people call it sentimental. Some people call it romantic longing. Some people call it a real commitment to the past and preserving it. All right. So there's that. But Gemini is a very contemporary sign. It's a very modern, present day, present tense type of sign. So this experience of bringing your past up to date with your present is something that's going to be very powerful. But I don't think you're going to be responding to it in a negative way. I feel like you're going to be responding to it in a not sure, curious way, but as soon sort of getting comfortable to how things are set up kind of way. And you might find it even very intriguing. You might find it intriguing that things that you would close the door on before in your life that you thought you'd never be thinking or doing again are suddenly very doable, and you're thinking and maybe even doing some of these things again. Let's say you gave up crochet, you might be back to doing crochet again. It's the past catching up to your present and things from the past being restored in your current situation. So you may also experience in this idea of return, you may be moving to a place in the country or the world where your people came from. Okay, let's say you originated in Eastern Europe, or your family comes from Buenos Aires, or you have relatives in Nigeria. Okay, so you may be returning to this place. This might be a visit, something in which you return to discover that you have relatives that you didn't know you had. They had heard of you, so you might be returning on a visit, or you might be returning to plant your roots here once again. There might be an ancestral dimension to this that's going on, and sort of like returning back to something that you might have left in this life, or maybe returning back to something that generations ago your family lived here. And so there can be that feeling to it as well. But as I said, what you're going to find is friends, that if you're going back to your homeland, people won't be like, who are you? You'll find friends, people who remembered relatives, or you'll be in contact and they'll want to help you get into contact with relatives or old neighbors or something along these lines. So there's a really strong feeling of restoration and reunion that's going on with Jupiter passing through this angle of your solar horoscope. And it just puts me in mind, Pisces, there's a phrase that was, I think it went something like, you can never go home again, you can't go home again was the phrase. And what it was that you can't go back to the home of your youth, the city of your youth, and expect things to be as they were. You can't go home again. But Pisces, this really open-minded and open-hearted approach that Jupiter in Gemini is going to give you, I think you're going to give that phrase, you can't go home again, I think you're going to show that it just is wrong, or at least that it doesn't apply to you, that you can indeed go home again and enjoy it. If you enjoyed what you saw, please press the like button. It helps more than you know. If you could subscribe, that would be wonderful. I've had such a wonderful time visiting with you this week, and I can't wait to get together next time on Christopher Renstrom Astrology.